So as I make this recording, there are new listings in Walmart's computers that tell us we are getting a brand new Huffer and Pipes in the upcoming Kingdom toy line for Generations. And with those announcements, that means that my 10 G1 characters who need new toys is officially a complete list. Whether I correctly predicted it or someone at Hasbro just noticed and ripped off my video, however it turned out, that video is now complete. And I know a lot of people have been going back to that video noticing, oh, he actually got a lot of those predictions right. And I don't really call them predictions. I think I just picked who was due, and it just happened to be 10 that I named. So since that list is now complete, it's time we moved on, and there's plenty to move on from because there's still plenty of toys out there that have not had proper redos. So with that in mind, here are 10 more G1 Transformers who still need new toys. So I'm going to get this one out of the way, and it's a small one, and it's a stupid one because he's gotten a few toys here and there, but in the current state of Transformers, it's kind of ridiculous that we have not seen a Buzzsaw in a little bit. He was in Fall of Cybertron along with Sound Blaster, so I'll give him that. And he was in Titan's Return. Now, technically, he was in Combiner Wars, but it was a Titan's Return toy released in advance. But you can hardly call that a really good Buzzsaw representation, can you? Not to mention, it wasn't the best Soundwave to be compared with. It's ridiculous to me because we have a brand new Soundwave, and it got remolded into a G1 accurate Soundwave, and we have all of these cassettes that are being packed in with that one. We have the Siege one that had Micromaster cassettes coming out with it, and then there's an extra box set full of extra figures. But instead of a Buzzsaw, which is just shoot yellow plastic instead of red into Laserbeak, no, we got Wing Thing, which is not even an accurate Wing Thing, which always gets on my nerves. And I bring up Buzzsaw because it kind of highlights this other point, in that there's a lot of cassettes from G1. You know, you don't have a new Slugfest or Overkill. You don't have most of Blaster's cassettes. You don't have any of the Combiners. We haven't seen a new Steeljaw since Generation 1. He's never had a new toy, except a Night Prowler masterpiece that came out but has never been done in its original Steeljaw colors. I don't know how that works, but that's how it works. So this is kind of a catch-all. Buzzsaw just seems like it's stupid that two really nice sound waves have come out or are coming out, and they haven't had such a simple repaint. It's only the cassette Soundwave came with when he first came out. I don't even think they did that for the reissue, did they? I don't remember Buzzsaw at all. Maybe they did. My brain is foggy. It's been a long week. But hey, there's a ton of... I'm basically just saying there's a ton of cassettes that need a little bit of love here. We live in a Transformers world where the Power Dashers have new toys. That is a weird world to accept. Those were mail-away toys in G1 who did nothing to fit into the G1 aesthetic. They were just 3 extra toys you could mail away to buy. There's no fiction for them. They weren't used in anything, but we have new Power Dashers. But if we've got new Power Dashers, I think it's only fair now that the Omnibots be covered as well, because doesn't that seem kind of obvious? Now, you do have one disadvantage in that few of the Omnibots have contemporary toys they could be based on, because they actually had somewhat unique looks to them. Now, Overdrive you could get one out of, okay, but the other two, maybe not so much. It's a little bit iffy because they'd have to do some kind of heavy remolding or brand new molding in order to accommodate them. So that's probably why you haven't seen them yet. But at this point, I think it's only fair because we're running out of original G1 toys that haven't gotten anything new, and here are 3 perfectly good cars that we've not seen the light of day of in a long, long time. At this point, if you're going to do Power Dashers, I think it's just time for the Omnibots to come back. At this point, that's only fair. This is going to be another weird one because technically he got one in Combiner Wars, but it wasn't a good one and it's not what we really want out of him. I think it's time that we got a new Wreckguard. Now, we got one in Generations, but Generations was at a weird point then when all the vehicles had to be realistic. No matter what character you were using, he had to turn into something that would fit in on Earth. Cup, for instance, just looked like an old pickup truck. Scourge was a flying wing instead of his big surfboard spaceship mode. So when we got our the one attempt we have in a new Wreckguard, he's a dirt bike, and because of that he comes off kind of lanky and scrawny, you know, not quite a good representation of the original G1 design. I would really hope that since we're in this phase of really nicely accurate toys, and we're kind of transferring into those and trying to cover as many of those bases as possible, I think it's time we got a nice accurate G1 Wreckguard with his correct chest and his correct head shape and his weapons and his wheel shield. I need the wheel shield again. And then we can actually like set it up so that like more than just the head can be swapped to create more Junkions. So because we need more Junkions so they can ride each other, right? That's the other thing. I need that big heavy motorcycle. I need that Mad Max orange motorcycle they turned into. I didn't get that out of the Generations one. I got something a Kamen Rider would ride in on. So I think it's time. I think that especially with so many of the movie cast already covered and the 86 movie characters on the way, I think it's time Wreckguard joined the group again. Now, much to my surprise, in an era where we are actually seeing just Transformer accessories being sold individually, little tiny Target Master style toys being sold on their own, it kind of stuns me that there are so many Target Masters from G1 that is just not being represented. You know, we got a Scoop, but I grew up with a Quick Mix and we don't have a new Quick Mix. Someone at Hasbro keeps putting Needle Nose in the fan votes and Needle Nose never wins. Someone really wants a new Needle Nose in Hasbro. But the ones I'm going to point out are two of the original ones that I thought we should have had by now in some way, shape, or form, and that is Sure Shot and Point Blank. Now, we just recently got Crosshairs, and really not a good Crosshairs because it was a Siege Ironhide remold, so he wasn't his like space dune buggy type thing. He was, you know, a big like armor van, and that's really unfortunate. Like, I kind of thought you could get a quirky remold of Sure Shot out of them, or not Sure Shot, Point Blank. Really get a remold between him and Crosshairs if you really thought about it. So it was a little bit disappointing that that wasn't a unique mold, and it's really disappointing that at this point, if you look at the 87 cast of Transformer characters, those are two of the only ones that are really left at this point. Like, at least as far as major toys, you know, it's just kind of weird. I'm starting to find out that there's these little gaps that have just never been filled in officially by Hasbro, and it's high time we do that since it's been too long. You know, at this point, if we're getting, once again, new Power Dashers, maybe toys that were actually on retail shelves back in the 80s might all have new figures by now, but they don't, which is why I'm still making videos like this. So yeah, show some Target Masters some love. That's all I want. So here's a weird one, and it makes sense when you think about it, but at the same time, it's a character that hasn't actually had an official, like, mass release toy ever. You know, it's a G1 character who had an entire episode devoted to him. You know, so we actually got to know him pretty well. And that is Devcon. And Devcon is kind of a unique thing in a rogue Autobot in G1, back when most Autobots were all together, one big military force. So to have that loner aspect made him pretty cool and made him pretty unique, but apparently not unique enough to actually have a toy at retail by now. All we have is a Fun Pug figure that was made for him, and that's kind of lacking. I think we can do a lot better than that at this point. When you consider that background characters like Hot Link are now getting toys, when you consider that all the female Autobots from Search of Alpha Trion all got toys, even the ones that didn't have speaking roles. Yes, they're all the same mold, but they still got toys. That's more than you can say for Devcon, who's never been seen at retail, despite having an entire episode devoted to him. So it's high time it happens. It's too unique of a character, and he's had too much of a spotlight put on him to completely ignore him any longer. Time to put Devcon on a shelf at Walmart and Target. So originally this was going to be something of a catch-all, because when we got Titan's Return, I kind of thought all of our triple changer bases were going to be covered. I thought we were going to get new horror cons. We did not. I thought maybe like we were going to get a Victory Leo out of that Alpha Trion that came out, because those are his 2 alt modes. That makes sense. Didn't get that. What we did get, strangely enough, we got a new Broadside who turned out to be about the modern equivalent of the original. To be fair, he ain't a brick, but he ain't much of a figure either. That plane mode is just like atrocious. It's just like it doesn't even account for the fact that his robot legs are just hanging there. They don't do a single thing for transformation. The aircraft carrier mode, that's kind of fun, but beyond that, the toy just felt like, I don't know. When you compare it to the others they did, especially when you compare it to Blitzwing, oh my god, it's night and day how good those 2 figures are between each other. And it just seems unfair because Broadside was the worst one in G1. So why is he also the worst one in Titan's Return? You need to give him another shot. And at this point, I don't care what size class you put him in. Put him in leader class so he actually has enough budget in order to get everything right this time. You even work in his alternate head from the animation, the really weird one that was apparently an error. Just go crazy, because it's a character that, again, he's been in multiple episodes, very little toy representation, and I'm tired of him being the butt of the joke of the triple changers. It's time that he actually had something a little bit more concrete. It's time he was given his due and finally had a good toy of his own. Now, there's a few characters from late G1 that actually managed to enter the Transformers universe as a whole and become something of a fan favorite, but that doesn't always mean that they have the notoriety to get brand new toys. In this case, we are talking about Nightbeat, and this is a weird one because we had a whole line of headmasters and Nightbeat was nowhere to be found, aside from that really weird screaming individual Titan Master. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but that was not a good idea. Unless you have Overlord and you can put 2 of them in his chest cavities, then it's an amazing idea. But beyond that, that's all we've gotten. We did get a Generations Nightbeat who was a Bumblebee retool, but hardly looked like the original Nightbeat. It's hardly a representation of the original character, and that wasn't even a very good toy to begin with. And that was even a plan B. Plan A was to remold him from Reveal the Shield Jazz, which is an awesome toy, and also completely nothing like the original Nightbeat. This is kind of baffling, because if you make a new mold for Nightbeat, that also lets you do Minerva. You can remold and get an extra character out of it, but you actually have to put that effort in. Nightbeat's one of those characters that the fiction, like the comic book fiction especially, keeps bringing up because he is a cool character. He's the detective of the Autobots. So why doesn't he have a good toy at this point? It just seems obvious. And since his last toy, both of his last toys were such a letdown, I think he's overdue. Are you ready for the fanboy entry? Are you ready for the fanboy entry? Because I already kind of hinted at it when we talked about Broadside. But you know what? we're going to go about it again. We are going to mention my favorite G1 Autobot, or at least as far as the Japanese fiction is concerned, Star Saber. Now, I bring him up not because of my own personal biases. I bring him up because if you look at it, we've had brand new toys for Fortress Maximus and for God Jinrai and Dai Atlas, which means all of the Japanese G1 leaders, even Star Convoy, have all had brand new toys done. Star Saber's just kind of out there in the wilds and has never had a brand new figure. We got one in Robot Masters and we got the Masterpiece, but they kind of just did the same thing over again. It feels like it was high time to have something new done with Star Saber and updated and modernized the way that a lot of other Transformer designs have been over the years. And didn't it feel like Power of the Primes was the perfect spot? You could have voted him in, but no, you voted for Optimus Primal because yay Beast Wars, and we got a terrible Optimal Optimus out of it. Great. But it's more insulting that, like, when you think of Power of the Prime's leader class evolution gimmick, that is Star Saber's gimmick. That's basically how Star Saber works, especially when you remember that the guy who made the really good Optimus Prime at that size was the same guy who engineered Star Saber in G1. And yet we didn't get that Star Saber. And that irks me. It's time he got something, a leader class. He could be another commander class toy, because we apparently have white and red and blue spaceships as just like, this is what we do at Commander. This is what we do at Commander class size, isn't it? Big white and red space jets. That's just kind of our thing. So it's time. Star Saber is now one of those characters that fills the last gap we need for a collection, and Hasbro's supposed to be all about that. So where is it? Here's another one that never had a toy. Well, he did. I've already mentioned it. But he is a cartoon character who's never had a toy that did him justice, and that is Alpha Trion. Talk about, like, a missed opportunity. Look at this. Alpha freaking Trion. There's few Transformers that harken to the history of Transformers, and just like Transformers being like this bigger, longer thing and having this real mythos more than Alpha Trion. He's the link to all the things that came before the Optimus Prime and Megatron version of the Cybertronian Wars that we're all so familiar with. He's part of the larger mythos. You know, he is the elder of Transformers. And yet, the only thing we got was a Titan's Return toy, which I like more than a lot of people do, but I will be the first one to tell you it is absolutely no sense of authenticity or accuracy to the original design. The only one that came out was a Cyberverse toy, and it was a crap Cyberverse toy, which is bad because it was in the Ultra class, and the Ultra class pulls out some really good figures every now and then, and that wasn't one of them. It's a hard design because we never saw an official vehicle mode for him, and it is a weird design to actually make into some kind of vehicle. But you know what? I've seen weirder. And let's face it, as far as G1 characters go, there's very few that have the level of prominence that Alpha Trion does without having an actual physical toy to back up that level of just mystique and notoriety. It's a huge gap that's missing, and it's high time. We need a good Alpha Trion. Now, earlier I mentioned characters that reached a level of popularity that led them join the greater Transformers universe despite not actually featuring in a cartoon or animated series, especially in the original G1. And we're going to talk about probably the most popular one who has not been very well represented in the Generations line whatsoever, and that's going to be Bludgeon, the final Decepticon leader in the original Generation 1 comic books. The samurai, the skull-faced samurai. The design itself is really cool, isn't it? So of course we want really good toys of it, but it seems to me like The only time I ever see Bludgeon is when I get a figure that's based on the Revenge of the Fallen design, which I've never been a fan of, and it's always a design that tries to cram the vehicle mode of the inner robot into the outer robot, and it never really works. It's time that we got a Bludgeon that genuinely represented Bludgeon, and now I'm going to go back to Power of the Primes, because think of what Evolution Optimus Prime did. Think of how that toy worked, and realize that toy is like a few panels away from just being a modern pretender. Most of that big vehicle, most of that big robot mode is just in the trailer. Prime himself forms the chest, the back, and who cares about the back, and it has the head. You could incorporate that into the trailer, no problem. And if you think about Bludgeon, you could go like whole hog on this, like deluxe class version of his inner robot. Compacts and transforms into like a bigger shell, just like that Evolution Prime. You give him this new like orange and maroon like vehicle that his little robot can pilot. It transforms into the body, plug them together to complete the robot mode. There is your big leader class Bludgeon that does everything that the original one, but actually better. That's how you do a new Bludgeon. We've seen now that something like that is possible. It's just up to Hasbro to actually do it. And you know what? I think Bludgeon's popular enough, you could absolutely get away with that. If you can do Double Dealer as a leader class toy, you can absolutely do Bludgeon as the leader class toy and make something basically as I just described. A really cool Bludgeon toy that actually looks and plays like Bludgeon should. And that, I think, right now is the biggest gap we are missing in Transformers. Because keep in mind, even if you include all those Revenge of the Fallen based Bludgeons, you're still dealing with Cyberverse and RID 2015. We still do not have a Bludgeon in Generations aside from a little tiny Prime. That's all we ever got. So, obviously, this is not a complete list. Obviously, there's going to be names left off. I'm basically just trying to second guess Hasbro once again, and this time I'm kind of shooting for the moon a little bit on a few of them. So, if you got ones that you want to see again, or any that are just blatantly obvious that I forgot about, tell me in the comments section, and then make sure you hit the subscribe button, so if we do this again, you'll be the first one to know that I'm talking about this again. So, hopefully this is going to be the last one I need to do for a while. I don't know what Hasbro's going to do, but who knows? Maybe I am psychic about these things. We'll have to wait and find out.